Welcome back to the Bigwater podcast. So we're doing another one of these things in the heat of summer. We just got back from ICAST, and that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about. So unlike a lot of these other guys, I don't like to talk to myself for 30 minutes about absolutely nothing. So we're going to bring in the guy that you guys want to hear from, have a little banter, have a little discussion with an old friend, but yet a current player in the game, John Balla. How you doing?
Pretty good, Ross. Good to see your face again from like a week ago in Orlando. Yeah, we don't see each other often enough.
If even that, yeah. It's funny how you have to go to these events and run into each other. But funny enough, a guy that lives just down the street from me, who I grew up with, who works in the industry, I had to meet him in the booth. I haven't seen him in person probably in a year, I bet, almost. Crazy. But anyway, that's kind of one of, we were talking at ICAST, and, with these podcasts, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know if you listen to a lot of them or not, or I'm not even saying mine, but just in general, it's really difficult to get people to talk and be honest. I think just in life, because everybody's afraid of everything and jobs and getting canceled and all this stuff. That can't happen here because it's wide open. That's how we do it. I don't think, the bosses listen to it. So I think we're fine. But it's at ICAST, it's the kind of a different vibe sometimes. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But the first thing is let's do a little job of explaining to people, because you got to remember, put this in other people's, deal. That, like, this is not the National Accounting Committee thing, but it's like the fishing version of that. So ICAST, do you remember what it even stands for? I've been told 900 times, but it's International something fishing, but there's no F in it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I just know the word cast somehow means fishing. So I don't know what the rest of the letters stand for, but it's where all the manufacturers go to show all their new products for the year. And then the buyers come in from all around the country to place orders and to see what's new. And in doing so, they invite a bunch of their sponsor pros. They invite a bunch of media people that come and film for like your sponsors. They want to do a lot of product placement, anything that's new out there. So it's not open to the public. You need to either be represented by a manufacturer or the media, and that's how you get in. So it's much different from my perspective than these consumer shows that I have to work, where I have to work a booth for a product sponsor of mine. It's just a heck of a lot easier to really get into the weeds with these guys and find out what they're thinking, where things are headed. And it's usually a year ahead of where trends are going. They started working on this stuff a couple of years ago, and finally the stuff is coming to market. And that's what we started seeing last week.
Yeah. So, like you guys, if you're still confused, think of it like if you're a car guy and you're into SEMA, like this is the SEMA of fishing in general, right? So saltwater stuff, you see a lot of fly fishing there. Of course, a lot of those green carp chasers, aka I'm always told I'm not supposed to say that, but dude, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, Brett Height, he came up to me at the show, and Mr. Jackhammer himself, and he's like, yeah, just so you know, I caught a few walleyes on St. Clair and I ate them. I'm like, can you imagine if I just went up to them like, hey, I just was on a family trip down to Smith Lake and I ate a couple smallmouth. They were delicious.
Yeah. Well, that's the nickname, the delicious bass they get when you catch one. But yeah, it's crazy. Those guys somehow think that, we're offended or whatever if they eat a walleye or two. And it's like, guys, especially where you live, Ross, you got 150 million of them in your backyard. So it's not a big deal. And I'd rather know. I was hoping he would tell you that he caught a bunch of fish on his jackhammer and gave us a little extra help on how to catch something, but apparently not.
Honestly, yeah, they're one of my buddies at Z-Man, and then I know Brett McComas too has caught fish on, especially that the mini one. And the trick there is, there you go, a little target. Yeah, I think that the trick there is to maybe change your skirt and your trailer a little bit. That would be maybe the. But anyway, so how many ICASTs have you been to?
That is my 5th, I believe. It's been a few years. I don't think I've been there since before COVID or whatever. I don't know how many years they canceled it, but I think my first one was probably 9 years ago, and I went a couple of years in a row. And then I just returned this year. And I do it on my own dime. I pay for it myself, strictly to see what's going on, where trends are going in the sport, to keep myself kind of relevant, I guess, so to speak, to network with some people that I haven't seen in a while, including pros, and people like yourself, media people, guides, whatever, anybody that's involved in the fishing industry, specifically walleye. But throughout the course of my, being around the sport for 30 years, whatever, I've been able to run in a bunch of bass guys too. And and like you said, it's heavily weighted to the bass community there for obvious reasons. You know, there's more of a consumer base than what we have, but.
Well, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but you know, for I don't know how many I've been to, but it's about 25. And for forever at the beginning, it was, you know, they were in Vegas. And it was like 1 out of 3 or 4 years it was in Orlando. And kind of again, this is me maybe going out on a limb a little bit, but the swing, because I kind of liked it out there, but the swing was when they had it in Florida, they had more of the saltwater people coming and they were able to do demos and they were closer with the water. And real talk is there's more fishing centered around people, you know, live in Alabama, don't have to go to Nevada. So the logistics, I think, were a little better with that. I don't know if it's better or worse or not, but I think there's a lot of saltwater stuff going on there, like a lot. You see foreign stuff too. You know, a lot of the people that are sourcing or people trying to source, you know, all kinds of different stuff. And like you said, for COVID there for a while, that got shook up a little bit. But what kind of difference what was the vibe difference that you saw, you know, from some of your earlier years, like pre 2020 versus now?
Yeah, I have to say, now that you jog my memory, Vegas was the first time I visited ICAST. That was the first one, and then I think I've been going to Orlando since they like made it yearly in Orlando, right? For the last, I don't know how many years, but anyway. So yeah, the vibe back in the day kind of was, it was always the ICAST, especially for me, was very much like there was a lot of product. There were a lot of coolers. There were a lot of other things. There was a lot of fly. There was the bass fishing, but this was pre MLF, you know, and all that switch and the change. So it was kind of FLW still. So I think you know, for me, I was probably still riding that wave of the FLW getting involved. And it was kind of bass heavy, and there weren't that many walleye guys there back then, but, back then it was, I think it was more of the tackle that we're seeing less of now. I can only say that just because in reference to where we're going to get to that conversation about where things might be going. But, you know, a lot of it back then was stuff that you're fishing on the bank, right, for bass. And that's what it was. Walleye stuff. I remember, I think, actually talking to you about your trolling book that had just come out. So when was that?
That's 15 years ago, John.
Okay, I was there. Wow. Yeah. So that's crazy. That's how far back it goes. But it was, so for those years, it was a lot of, hey, our walleye guys are coming down and we're talking about trolling. We're talking about open water fishing, planer board fishing. And that trend from 15 years ago till about 5 years ago, that's kind of what it was for me. I had to seek out the specific things I wanted to see for walleye back then. So, I have noticed now more, because the bass guys are all throwing bait casters, right? And medium, heavy, fast stuff. And now there is that trend towards what I've seen lately, and we'll get into that, is more of the spinning tackle. So I would say it was more trolling focused for me on the walleye side, more product focused in terms of the bank beaters on the bass guys, and a lot of fly stuff, a lot of saltwater that I remember, and a lot of coolers. I remember it was like 12 different cooler manufacturers like there normally, but I didn't see that many this year.
Well, you know, and that's kind of where I'm going with it. Because again, people surprisingly, I get asked this all the time, especially as we're leading up with guide clients or just emails or when we send out our newsletter and stuff. And because people are always like, you know, fishing people, like they want the inside scoop. You know what I mean? They want to feel like they're there, and they probably wouldn't go to the show if they could, but the fact that they can't get into it, or most people can't easily get into it, that's not the point. Now all of a sudden that's like the green grass or whatever, right? But I think for me, you see these trends with the show, but also, like you said, with the fishing. So like it was batteries a couple of years ago, probably in that period you missed. It was just lithium batteries everywhere. And we've got a lighter one, a tighter one, a more expensive one, a cheaper one, ECM's different. So you see those trends, and it's kind of like that with soft plastics companies too, where to me, you go in and it's like, and I don't know if this is because the actual manufacturers that are making a lot of the stuff behind the scenes, just like batteries, like there's only a handful of people that really make batteries in the world, right? There's not 5 million, makers, actual true manufacturers. And I wonder if they kind of like leak, because I know that goes on, leak the info, because all of a sudden you see 10 different companies that don't like each other, that have something that is so similar, and it's, technology or, shapes, even things like that, where there's no way that there wasn't some monkey business that kind of went on there. So John, what is your thought on the consumer shows? Because it just seems like, I'll give you my opinion, that, but what are you feeling? Because you attend these, you work them, you do them both sides. So what are you feeling on this? What's the vibe?
So I think the vibe over the last couple of years has completely changed since COVID started. 100%. I noticed pro staffs are being reduced. The number of consumers that show up to these shows, they're mostly concerned about grabbing a beer and a hot dog and walking around. Honestly, they're kicking tires. We're not selling as many like products at these shows as we ever did. Most are saying, hey, I've got these bucks at this retailer. I'm going to go use it. I just came here with my buddies to hang around. And I just thought the trend, because of what happened during COVID, manufacturers, you saw it, Ross, they hardly had to do any kind of work to sell a bunch of product. We gained anglers, we gained market share for all of our stuff. Prices of boats, everything went up. Everything went up. Supply chains caused prices to go up, but everybody was buying. So they had no reason to lower prices, and they couldn't get product, I guess, to fulfill some orders. But that changed the game. And now these consumer shows, there's one here that I don't even know if it's going to continue. The Chicago Boat Show, I think is done now. I think they're moving it, which, it's not a fishing show, but they have some fishing boats. There's been some brands that show fishing boats. So I would say that has been the biggest change to me, is the consumer shows and how they've just become a kind of a way to get out of the house, maybe see some product, but most people are seeing this stuff online, or they're seeing it through YouTube or through your like Fish USA content or whatever it is. And they don't have to go to these shows anymore. They just really don't. They used to have to go see them to see their favorite pros talk about something. Now they do tend to get a few people to show up at some of their talks, but not like before. They get 20 people up in an upstairs room. There used to be hundreds showing up.
I know that all too well. And even like, I go, sometimes it's not even the number of heads, which it obviously is part of it, but I think a lot of people are just getting a load off their feet, and they're like, yeah, like, no, I'm free. They're like trying to earn their seat, where you don't have that engaged crowd. Now, certain places, there's different shows, that I do work at. And they got it figured out. They got that hardcore crowd. But to your point, I think, places that I work with, like Fish USA, they conditioned us and did a good job of saying, hey, after COVID, order this, and for $50, you get free shipping, and we're going to get it to you tomorrow. And oh, by the way, here's a coupon for this. Oh, by the way, here's buy two, get one free. Why would you go to the show and then they tell you, well, we don't have that. Oh, we're out. And you paid $20 to get in. So I think you've hit that nail on the head. I don't think that it's like bait shops though. Don't be too careful, people, of wanting these things to go buy, because it's just like, it's like listening to music to me, right? Like everybody listens to music on their Bluetooth, but the concerts are still here. Like if you're into something, there's no, again, I answer questions at shows for people that I probably wouldn't answer anywhere else. It's almost like you try to reward them for making that effort.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You feel like, hey, no one's listening. I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'll tell you, I'm not telling the world, I'm telling you in private. And then they'll tell other people and they want to come back. It's for sure one of the way it's gone. I as much as I like working for these manufacturers to work some of these booths, but it has just gotten a little bit, I guess it's a little bit less enjoyable knowing, because we're not moving the same product we did before. I'm meeting a fair number of people, which is great, and we're getting the word out. But now we've got deliveries and Amazon, and honestly, the whole return process, which happens, is way easier than it's ever been. They come right to your door, pick it up. I mean, the amount of trucks, and my friends are in the packaging business. They're beyond like happy about where their progress has gone, because everything's just basically Amazon or FedEx or UPS. It's crazy. So it's much easier to get product than ever was. So there's less of a need for people to go to these shows to see exactly what they were going to buy before. And again, social media, YouTube, TikTok, whatever people are using, whatever media they're using to get the word out about a product, it's getting out there. And people know kind of what they want to buy for the place they're going. They can find a specific body of water that they want to find some product on and buy it right away. They can click on a link on a social media post. They can click on a link below a YouTube post. You're putting that stuff on your stuff. It's much easier. In the last 5 years, we've learned since COVID, and everything's elevated up. This whole e-commerce thing has just exploded. There's just less of the need to be in person, unfortunately.
you follow the back end of that too, because even let's say things were a little better on the front end, on the back end of it, I can tell you, just because a lot of the manufacturers I work with and some of them very close, I help do some setup even in booths and things at these, like the ICAST show. And do you realize how much it costs to be there?
Oh,
I mean, do you really know?
I can't imagine, but here's what I'll tell you. At the McCormick place in Chicago, it costs like $4,000 to get a union guy to come and hang one of those banners.
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. I could tell you about some fights and stuff that were going down because the union company there, it's just like, okay, we'll do it. But then they're like, oh, we can't come back for 2 days. And you're like, you have to literally push a button. Like, and in some of that insanity, the funny part of that though, is I guess that, again, I'm not pro or anti-union on these things, but the thing is in some of these shows, they pulled out, and then all of a sudden the same union, because there's a couple of unions that run most of these shows. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, a lot of them. And then all of a sudden when they don't have the show, then the guys are like, oh no, we'll do that for nothing, because then they come back and they like, it's like, you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. But I won't say who, but one of my sponsors who doesn't even have what I would call a large presence there or do anything absorbent, like just ridiculous, it's about $200K for them to be there. You got to sell a lot of jigs, hooks, whatever that, it doesn't matter. And I work with a couple other companies that I've never asked or gotten that situation, but I know that they are very far north of that number. And, when you don't have as many buyers and things coming, because I think the flip of it is it's a big thing. The all around problem is you don't have as many media, you don't have as many buyers because they don't have to. Just like companies that I work with, they were sneaking or pre-releasing on purpose these products, like Z-Man. They released a bunch of these products ahead of time. I didn't have to be there as a buyer or as Ross, the whatever, or John. So I think that's part of it. But the thing that to me, and I wondered if you had been there long enough or seen these kind of trends, but and I'm not even blaming ICAST when I say this. I'm really not. Like, I'm not a fence rider, this, but
yep.
The numbers in these shows are going down all over. Every time I go, they're like, oh, we're up 10%. Every year they're up 10%, but yet 10 years later, you got less people or maybe the same. Like ATA, the Archery Trade Association, is almost like, it's not a dumpster fire. It's remnants of a foundation that was wood after the Chicago fire. You know what I'm saying? And
is the cow kicked over the can?
The cow kicked over 10 cans. Okay. So again, things are changing. And I think these other organizations, look at that and say, okay, we don't want to be those guys. But a lot of this is because of, like, ICAST has made, one year that there was so many people that they let in that were kids and people that obviously should not have been there, to either keep their numbers up or trying something, good for them. But then it was like, did anybody really think through this at all? And then I can remember there was a few years there where they had, all the YouTube kids. Like, I do YouTube, I get it, but they had people that were blatantly not there for the right purpose, or they were blowing in on things and just completely unprofessional. So then it's like, oh, they pulled the plug on allowing that. And they're almost like they're trying to reinvent or try so many things that you just keep going from one to the next and it doesn't catch up. But the lack of media there, to me, is probably one of the biggest problems, because I think some of the people that I work with would still be there if they were getting the media and the press, but those people just don't show up, because if they're going to go on their own dime, and it's a lot of work, man, and a lot of time and money, and what you have to do to get that, if someone's just going to, mail you or email you a zip drive and say, here's the files, here's the press release. Why are you going to fly 2,000 miles and then sit in the airport when the world gets shut down like I did?
Oh my God, I can't. I thank God I got out Thursday. But listen, I'm pro union. I get that there's all kinds of things behind it. They got to try to keep the thing and the integrity of their jobs together. I get it. They've got to do it. It is expensive, so you do have to sell a lot of jigs for a 200K booth. But while you were speaking, actually, Ross, I did think of something I kind of noticed now. I realized that there were probably more people like me than ever before, and there shouldn't be. I'm there as a fan, and there was a lot of fans I saw there. Like, then they weren't media people, they weren't pros. They were like, I was kind of like, how did these people? How are they getting in? They're just like, they're taking pictures of stuff just for, like, as fans or whatever. They're not buying anything, and they're collecting stuff in bags and buckets, like they're going to like they went to a trade show, like a consumer show. And so I did notice that. Now that you mention it, more than ever. And
that's the bitch from a lot of the higher ups at companies that I work with, that they're like, hey, I spent 5 minutes talking to this guy and then realized he's in, like you said, a fan there. And I might have had the buyer from Fish USA walk by and I didn't get with him because that's the whole point. But which kind of leads me into what we're going to talk about a little bit later, the whole fan deal. Like, that's a whole other thing. But so getting off ICAST a little, because I think we did a good enough job of kind of covering what the heck that is. But what are the trends that you saw? I just want to see if it's a different perspective than what I had. But the trend there, the vibe at the show, as far as what the manufacturers were putting out, give us your quick breakdown on that.
My quick breakdown, I'd say a couple of things I first noticed. Forward-facing sonar. That was one of the biggest talks in terms of new lures that are coming out. And that's in contrast that people kind of bitching about, boy, my sales are down for crankbaits, for trolling, for this or whatever. But yet there's these opportunities that are flipping to make themselves available in the forward-facing sonar world. Baits, line, rods, reels. That was, and you mentioned batteries earlier, but I did see kind of a push on more battery too there, Ross. Like, we can handle 4 or 5 of these units now. Our batteries, our lithiums can handle all of these forward-facing sonars. You've got 3 or 4 transducers on your boat. We've got batteries that can handle it. We've got batteries that can run your stuff all day long, and your live wells for you live well guys that need it for tournament. That's what I 2 or 3 of the booths actually were talking to me about that stuff. And then those were kind of the 2 things that stuck out to me.
Well, I work with a hard bait company, and they said across the board, 100% baits like that are down. And I don't know if anybody's ever said it just like this, but I'm not saying I'm the first one to say this, but think about this. They banned the umbrella rig, right? A rig, whatever you want to call it, a handful of years ago. It's probably longer than you think, but because of its effectiveness. But really what it was, I'm going to tell you, it was dollar bills, because when they banned that, you had one company that had a patent or whatever, and they're like, hey, like Z-Man, they had the deal on the chatterbait. They didn't want to not be able to have any other manufacturer come in there and sell or promote or do, where it becomes a one-trick pony. But it's kind of funny because that's kind of what's happening with forward-facing sonar. Like, everybody's using a minnow. Like the Z-Man Jerk Chat, I don't know what the numbers on that thing are right now, but it's won millions of dollars. That's all you would have to use if you wanted to catch fish. Probably 2 or 3 colors, a couple jig head sizes, if you were good with forward-facing sonar, right? So it's just the irony in it is it past you?
Well, yeah, it's kind of funny. Some companies are looking at these as opportunities to make new baits, and some are just saying, hey, why aren't you paying attention to our old stuff that used to catch fish? So we want to get rid of forward-facing sonar so we can keep selling these. But I just think these trends they're just twisting and changing and evolving. And you said, okay, maybe all you need is that minnow. There's certain times of the year, right? But there's certain times of the year when they're up on the bank for a month, a couple of months, that's not going to work, right? So I don't know. I don't think it's in a bad spot. I think economically, maybe they're starting to lose, unless I'm missing your point though, Russ. Economically, they're starting to lose some of the, maybe some market share just by the economy being down. But I just think this is opening up opportunities for other baits. That's what I think. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a different deal. I think a lot of these things that we think are a problem, time tends to take care of it. Can't say that very fast, but when you look at all these things that we just look at things in your life, right, or anybody else's, and you're like, oh my God, and then a year goes by and you don't even think about it. And it's kind of like that with this, where one of the funny things, we've talked about this on several podcasts, where I'm not sure if you're probably not familiar with ice fishing team tournaments. Sure. But basically it's like you're on a tether, like you can't go, and everyone is different, but you can't go, if me and you are partners, we can't walk more than 20 feet apart or something, right? The point is you just can't go on one end of the lake, I go on the other. So what these guys are doing is let's say I'm going to shine both of our forward-facing sonars at team B, C, and D over here and play defense and let you fish like behind me, because so many of these in these pressured areas that once you start shining that forward-facing sonar on, boom, the fish shut down. I was talking to Tony Roach about this actually at at Rapala booth there at ICAST, and he was like, "Yeah, when you're doing these slip bobber things, you know, we basically locate these fish, and then we shut it down, turn it away." And you know, so I think as these fish have adapted, that's just what they do, right? They adapt, and maybe it won't be crazy. I mean, God, people thought mapping and 2D sonar was going to destroy fishing, so.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we haven't even really gotten into the talk, but that, I mean, of what forward facing sonar is, if you even want to get into that, I don't know. I mean, I got plenty of opinions on it, against maybe some of the popular opinions that are out there, but, no, I didn't know that was going on. I didn't know that was a thing. I guess they think that the actual ping of the forward facing can actually distract or, you know, shut down a bite somewhere across the bay. That's pretty interesting.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say on here, but because it was a confidence thing, but one of the biggest name bass pros told me that when he first started using, we call it a live sonar back then, I think, he said, if I saw 10 fish, I want to say it was like, he said he could catch 8 or 9 of them or something. And now it's 1 or 2 because he believes the spooking factor.
Huh.
Yeah.
Boy.
Which I would, I mean, you talk to a lot of the walleye guys that are pretty good at, they're like, yeah, these fish they're going to, you don't monkey with them like you do ice fishing, which I know that's not your cup of tea, but where you can work a fish for 10 minutes ice fishing and you can make them commit. Where with this, it's just like, maybe you could doing this, but you just move on to the next one. And if you live where I live, you can more than probably some of the bodies of water you fish. But
yeah, well, see, I've heard the opposite though, Ross. I've heard from guys that they can work, like, you know, I've heard Tom Wynn and some of these guys, they'll work a fish for 20 minutes and they'll get them to commit. They'll get them to fire up. I've heard guys saying, no, you better stay far 90 feet away because the fish are going to get spooked. Well, those are crystal clear bodies of water. Because I've had fish bite 20 feet from the boat on forward facing sonar in dirtier water. I mean, so I don't necessarily know if the pinging is freaking them out. I actually think in that clear water, I think it's the boat. This big giant 22 footer casting a shadow and you get 60 feet from it. I think they sense it because you can actually see the fish disperse. If you back off, they'll come back out of where they dispersed. I think in clear water, it's the boat.
100% the boat. But then you go back to the ice fishing thing when you got 2 guys not moving, sitting on a bucket, and you turn it on and they all boop.
Yeah. You know? See, I haven't experienced that. So that's interesting though. That's interesting. Yeah. That's really, really interesting. Is it because of and what are they fishing for in these ice terms? Is that crappie and stuff like that? Or is it still walleyes and stuff?
No, most of it's panfish, you know, bluegills, crappies is, I would say, an overwhelming portion of that. But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you every situation is different. You know, there's an old writer I work with, and he always says, don't be a broken clock fisherman where you write twice a day and then you think you are the rest of the day. You know what I mean? You like that one?
That's
Me
a good
and you
one.
both know we know some broken clock fishermen, but
yeah.
I think that right now, you know, like, I think the reason that the live sonar thing is such a huge deal is because there is no answer. There's no good answer of should we ban it? Should we this? Look at the bass guys right now. Aside from the Major League Fishing debacle or whatever you want to call it, it's not even bass versus Major League Fishing is kind of in the ditch, you know, seemingly. I actually heard some things that ICAST some numbers on some stuff, and I was like, holy moly, that doesn't look real good for them long term. But who knows? Not my rodeo.
I've heard that same story for 6 years and they still keep going, and they just announced their 2025 season. So I don't know what to believe. I mean, apparently people like watching the show that aren't necessarily you and me, the fan. It's like a competition, but for whatever reason, it just keeps working. Now, I think
I don't own any FBD shirts or anything like that, and I really don't have any skin in the game or care. Okay. Me and James Watson are probably not going to be buddies, even though I think he's hilarious. But they had some financing pulled on them, a little inside deal here that I think is going to make life a little tougher on them. But, you know, there's other people financing. Who knows? Some of these guys.
Obviously, yeah, they had some issues, right, Ross, when they were going to pay for all of their entry fees, but then obviously that only lasted a year, and then they're forced to pay the entry fees a year. So there's still money that is not just pouring in, like, because they don't sell tickets. That's a big thing. You and I've always talked about tournaments. We don't sell tickets like NBA or NFL. We don't have this big deal with the networks.
You can't get people to show up for free. How are you going to
get people to show up for free? So we have no stream of, like, if you look at the top 5 or, like NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL, like I think 3 out of those 4, it's the contract they have with the networks that is supplying most of their money. And then the next is ticket sales. And then it's flipped a little bit with NHL. It's ticket sales and then the TV revenue. We don't have that. And so I think what's going on in BPT and Major League Fishing is they've got some pretty good sponsors, non-endemics, that are getting the number of viewers are watching their shows are high. And I think they're plugging in these anglers. It doesn't even matter who the anglers are, obviously, because the same anglers that I used to run into at ICAST that everyone was like, oh my God, look, it's him. They're just, you're walking by them now. They're not even there anymore. They're nothing. They're just, to me, they can put anybody in on the Bass Pro Tour and make that thing work. Because it doesn't even matter. And that's why I think the anglers are struggling with getting sponsorships because the sponsors are going, we don't even see you. We don't even see you. Nothing.
This totally went left wing, but I'll finish it with this. A company that I work with, a major company, was asked, there was a guy who let's just say has very high accolades in Major League Fishing or fishes Major League Fishing. And he went to my company and my boss basically says, we don't hire Major League or we don't sponsor Major League Fishing guys because they feel the return is so low if you're not one of the boys were. And then why would you sponsor Joe Angler, not the tour? But yeah, that dumpster fire aside. Yeah. I guess the point I was kind of originally going is just like the bass fishing world seems to be in more turmoil. Like if you try to watch a podcast or any video, it's just like, it's like Ricky Lake meets, you remember some of those, you remember Ricky Lake?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But what was that other, didn't you guys had one in Chicago? What was that one guy that was dumpster fire?
What was his?
Maury Povich?
No, it was.
What was the other one? The guy he was a mayor.
And he had the bouncer
Jerry
guy.
Springer.
Jerry Springer. Yeah.
God, the kids ain't going to get that one. Kids go watch YouTube and Google that.
You are the father.
Yeah, 100%. There's some Jerry Springer stuff going. And the shame is, even as I sit in meetings with some of the media people at the companies I work for, they're like, well, if you want to get views, I'm tell you what you got to do. You got to make things controversial. And I'm like, that's a society thing and it's a shit show, but I guess it is what it is. But that's what people want to watch. They want to see the Ricky Lake and the Jerry Springers. And if you're under the age of 40, you probably don't know what I'm talking about right now, but yeah, controversy.
So your point, to piggyback on what you're saying, I have had several conversations with guys about the difference between how the walleye guys have accepted and adapted and adopted even forward-facing sonar versus the traditional bass people. The majority of them, if I feel like, they're like against it. And I don't know if I've ever talked to one walleye guy that says, I don't like it. Because it's hard enough. The hardest part was finding the walleyes. Getting them to bite is still a challenge, but the hardest part was always finding them. And now if this helps you find them, we're all on board. It's great. It makes it easier.
Yeah, I think you know what the difference is, and again, total dumpster fire conversation because there's no winning here. There's no right answer. That's why this is such a big controversy, because I'm not a fence rider, but I don't even have an answer. Like if you said, hey, pour $100 million, there is no answer to this. But I think what it does is you've got the young bucks coming in, and it's very difficult. Look at Kevin Van Dam. If you don't think his exit had something to do with this, you're insane. I don't think the Major League Fishing debacle had any help for that, but these old guys, it does kind of change the things. I mean, there are guys, if you're into shooting, that use a 28 gauge to shoot ducks because it's more sporting. There are guys, and I make fun of the guys in fishing for doing this in a roundabout way. I mean, I'm going to probably have to eat crow here down the way, because it's like, I know fly fishing guys that I'm like, this is dumb, but they're like, we don't care if we don't get bit. We were down in Louisiana a couple of falls ago, and there was a guy who literally in 5 days never caught a redfish, and he was happy. We had dinner. He listens to this, so I'm not going to say who. And I'm like, huh? But he, his whole thing was, I know I can go out and throw a big ass bobber like you're doing. I mean, they were throwing popping corks and junk, junk, junk with a big old Z-Man diesel minnow, and you're going to catch 20 fish a day, even if you don't even pay attention.
Yep.
It's like, it's the Lake Erie of the saltwater market. But yet this guy has said, hey, I'm at the point, man, I don't need to catch 25 big redfish every day. I want to try to do it this sporting way. And I think that I think that there is some validity to it because like Gerald Swindle, again, we keep talking bass guys, but they're way more vocal because most walleye guys suck at media if they even do it, but which is part of what we'll talk about, I'm sure. But so the reality is with this is you have guys that have spent their entire life figuring things out and trends. And like you said, going on the bank and fishing this body of water in muddy water in spring and fall. That experience cannot be gotten in decades is what it takes. And now you have guys that are running right out of high school. You got a 19-year-old kid that's just like, hey, I see him. He's really good at playing the video game and he's whooping their ass. And, you know, I think some of the young guys, what their problem right now, and this is like really gonna get me in trouble, but I want to know your take on this. Some of these young guys ain't doing it right. You know, there was one guy, he had run-ins in like 4 out of 5 tournaments, and even old Swindle got pretty vocal. And he's not the only one. There's several of them. So I think part of it is I think the old guys are not happy about getting money taken from them. Now, it just translates right into walleye fishing. It's no different. But I think sometimes, like Grandma used to say, it's not, you know, it's not what you say, but how you say it sometimes, right? And I think some of these guys are not respecting the game a little bit more so on the bass side. On the walleye side, that's a whole nother dumpster fire, which is rule breaking, period. But what's your thought on that?
So my thought is, I know exactly what you're speaking of. I've got a couple different thoughts on it. There has been several run-ins, but I would only equate one of those to being immature and reacting poorly. That's the one where he reacted poorly to the veteran about self-reporting, and he did not handle it the right way. I think his other mistakes, he's young, he's on the tour, he's new, nerves, whatever it is, that's not necessarily a malicious something that he could have controlled. He just either forgot his time or whatever, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff to me. And the other stuff was well within the rules. He was allowed to get some waypoints well within the rules. The rules have since changed, but the one run in I thought wasn't the best, because even the person in question, you know, Gerald, and God bless him, I love the guy. Remember years ago, he got DQ'd because he ran too fast next to another boat. I don't know if you remember that.
I can even see the video. Apples and oranges to me a little bit, but I mean, you look at like the walleye stuff. There's several guys. I guess where it's kind of like, let's back up even further than that. Let's talk about the walleye cheaters in Ohio, even though I swore I would never speak about that again.
Right.
I had guys coming up to me for a year and a half before I even knew who those guys were. Like, because that's not my, believe it or not, even though it's in my backyard, that's just not my daily deal. Even though I know all of, you know, the owners of those things and tournament directors and such, what have you. But I just, that's not my daily deal. That's, because there's too much drama. It's for the same things we're talking about here. And again, this is a club versus, there is a difference, because when you're making a living, like with the Bassmaster Elites, it needs to be handled different than the Lake Erie Walleye Trail. Yep. Just it does. And anybody that says, and I guarantee we'll get comments on that saying that that's bullshit and, oh, you're this and that. And it's like, no. If you're a professional accountant or you're doing your own taxes at home on TurboTax, there's a difference. There just is. And so, but I think that there was a lot of, where I'm going with this is there was a lot of smoke with the Lake Erie Walleye Trail. And I told guys, I said, hey man, then you guys need to self-report. Y'all need to step up. There were some videos. I said, why am I seeing this video? Why are you not showing this to other people? I got no skin in this game. I said, you need to show this to the people. But again, you forward into walleye fishing right now, there's a couple guys that are doing some shitty shit. And, you know, I've seen videos. I've had co-anglers that have been with these guys whom I know. Some of them are guide clients. They want to come step up to me. I'll tell them, listen, you're being a shitbag. A couple of these guys I've had run-ins myself with. They're shitbags. And I think that when you see this much smoke, and again, like with the bass guy we're talking about, I don't have any insight other than just seeing some of these things. So I'm not directing that at them. But I think that when you talk to some of these guys, my point of this is there's a lot of smoke. And when you have somebody that has 4 or 5 alleged things in a row at a tournament on the bass side or on the walleye side, we got a couple guys here getting tickets. We're fishing in the thing. You know, every time it's something, we're snagging fish. The next time we're fishing out of bounds. Now we don't have this. Now there's always something. So my point of this is it's like, if you get 10 speeding tickets, the chances are you sped 1,000 times. And that's my point of it, is I think there's a lot of other things going on. They're either not getting caught, or if we're just being brutally honest, I don't know how honest you're going to get with me. Walleye tournaments have not upheld or dug into the rules for a long ass time. And that's why the numbers on guys are down, in my opinion.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms. I mean, there's no question that the way some of these, I don't know, I don't even want to call them whatever they are, discrepancies or infractions or questionable
gray area,
gray areas, how they've been handled has not been, in my opinion, done the right way.
Do you remember the one a couple years ago with the excavator when they dug into the one place and then they didn't do it? Like,
yeah, it was Devil's
it's
Lake.
Not one thing. Yeah,
it was Devil's Lake. I guess here's my one comment, right? You do hear about these incidents, Ross, and it's terrible. It sucks because it puts a bad image and name on walleye fishing. As a walleye fisherman, I'm like, God, I hate to have this person representing our brand, so to speak, right? But it's only one or two people, maybe. It's not the other 120 of all the incidents day in and day out, all the weigh-ins for years and years and years. Everything goes smoothly, everything follows the rules. It always seems to come down to one or two individuals that are all of a sudden elevating the negative, on top of the weight thing. That's all we needed was a supposed rule infraction and everything that went down up at the Sioux, right? That's the last thing we needed as a walleye sport. It's the last thing we needed. The whole world, the whole world knew about these stupid weights. I got memes. You got them every single day. Stuff sent to me. It was a
memes.
Joke.
I'm at a gas station on my way out of town fishing, and people see I have OH numbers, and they're like, "You know them cheaters."
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'm from Ohio, and I have a boat, and they knew nothing about fishing, and they just assumed that I probably live next to them.
Oh, every person in my life that knows I'm a walleye fisherman sent me that. I got hundreds. It was ridiculous. Finally, I'm like, people, it's over. But anyway, so I just don't.
But you know what the sad thing is? I interrupt you for once. You know what the sad thing is the Lake Erie Walleye Trail is the only one to uphold the freaking rules.
Right. That's where I was going with it. They stuck with it, and that was it. Bill Guarini back in the day, Spring Valley Walleye Club tournaments, he would get up in front and treat everybody like a man and say, "You break this law, you're out. You break this law, you're out. Barges cannot stop. You get out, you get in front of them, you're DQ'd, we're getting rid of whatever it is." He said, "This is the rule. You better follow it or you're out." There was nobody's name that was bigger than the sport. And right now I feel like they're letting a couple of guys around it because their name is fairly well known. And I don't care who you are. You break a rule inadvertently, not maliciously, you just suffer the consequences. And that's it. That's how they're going to get the respect of you and me and the other anglers that have been around the block forever. There's a lot of veterans on that tour pretty upset about, the negative connotation along with walleye fishing and not following the rules and cheating and skirting the rules. And it's horrible. It's not fair. That's why I'm trying to make a point. There's a lot of incidences. It's kind of like the cops being vilified for one guy that does a bad thing. And then the rest of the police are all looked at as like, oh my God, they're not, right? Walleye fishermen, tournament fishermen, for the most part, 99.9% of them are ethical, honorable people. It's just these ones that are skirting the rules for a couple $1,000s just make it look bad for the rest of us because that gets the loudest reaction. That gets more reaction, like you said. Everyone likes the dumpster fire, the Ricky Lake, the Jerry Springer. They like that stuff. That's how I feel about it. And to go back to what you asked me about, these bass guys and that, the forward-facing sonar for them. I wish I had some stats on it, Ross, because it's not like these guys that aren't really adapting to it and like they're not embracing it. It's not like they're catching the same amount of weight they used to catch. They're catching less. So I would think if you're a veteran, you've got experience, you've got an innate talent to catch fish. Every body of water you've been to 10 times, you should know that better than any rookie or anybody that's been through high school that's coming up on the elites right now that's a rookie. If you just adapted to this technology that's available to you, I would think you would be kicking everyone's ass. If you had all that knowledge and experience, instead of just saying, "Oh my, I'm going to just still keep fishing the bank no matter what. I'm just going to pound it in the ground." But again, they're not weighing the same amount they weighed before forward-facing sonar. So what's changed? I don't get it.
That Cowboy Joey, again, the bass thing. He almost won Angler of the Year last year. You guys that are listening to this, JB is actually the stat king, ironically, but we're not having him do any stats because we don't. Why would we be? That's just that'd be too simple. But so Joey the Cowboy on the Bassmasters there, you know what I'm talking about? Joey Suentes, or however you say it, right? So the Joey the Cowboy sounds a lot easier and more accurate. He won, I believe, 2 events. Somehow didn't win Angler of the Year because I think he just must have had one dumpster fire or something. Rookie year, right? And this year, I just listened to something else where like he's like at the bottom of the barrel. Now he was forward, he was doing forward facing stuff. So again, this isn't like automatic type things. And again, like you said, I think that the thing, because as you can imagine, owning a guide service, people are like, oh, forward facing. They don't even know what that means. We want to do that. And I'm like, you guys can't even catch them trolling. I mean, come on now. Yeah. I'm like, and they don't realize that these guys are, there's a skill set to it, obviously, of doing it, which I don't know how we can even get into that on the podcast. But I mean, a lot of these guys, you see out there and you watch them, they catch 8 or 9 fish in a day. If I caught 8 or 9 fish with a guide client with the way Erie is right now, they probably would beat me with a noodle because they expect that in the first 20 minutes because of the way things are. And I don't think they understand the whole thing. But without naming names, some of the boys that you travel with and some of the old guard that we talked about when we were at ICAST, that maybe, I don't even know, some of them probably, and I could name one of your really good buddies who I would probably say has not adopted it or really bought into it. There's a big name guy you said that he didn't buy into it because I think of, the guy that you said was doing half and half. But without naming names, because they're not here, I'm not going to do that. But as a thing, because you talk to so many of these guys, the old guard either not adopting it or not being good at it, how is that affecting things or the attitudes, or what's your take on that?
So what I'm hearing is we better get better. Otherwise, we're sick of losing money. We keep getting our ass kicked. We have to get better. Part of it was some brand loyalty, in my opinion, and I think most of the general census on people that have been using this stuff, there are 2 at the top and there's 1 at the bottom, without naming. And several of the ones using the 1 at the bottom were not doing well. And I've used both at the top and 1 at the bottom. And there is a difference. There's a huge difference. And I think that was one of the biggest things that was inhibiting a lot of the guys. And it was kind of, if you looked at some of the bass guys and who was using which brands, it was kind of coming clear too, unfortunately.
Well, you're seeing a lot of movement because of that. Yes,
exactly right. And I'm not trying to, do anything about anyone's sponsors or anything. I'm not trying to, because all these friends I know people that work at all these places. They're all friends. So I don't want to put anyone down, but that's what I've seen. I've seen that the ones that are adapting to certain products have done better. And that's despite lack of experience on certain bodies of water, lack of time on the water. First time fishing a body of water, all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, I found them and I caught them. So their mind is not like, oh, I hate it. These young kids don't deserve the accolades because they haven't paid their dues, which I think could be part of the thing on the bass side. They feel like they haven't spent all their years trailing around the country. They don't deserve the press that they're getting. But
here's pause for a second on that. So with that, I also agree, because I don't know how to say this and come across right, but like I get guys all the time. Like I fished with like legends as a kid, Gary Roach, Dave Hansen, and in some of the guys even that, you travel with and we're mutual friends with, I don't even put them with the L as in legend yet, because I don't think they're old enough. And I think if you were to translate this to the sport thing, it's just like, if you have a basketball player that does really well for a year and a half, you're not saying you're putting him in the Hall of Fame or he's a legend. And I see these guys now, to your point, they're like, and I'll get people that come up to me, and of course I have to be somewhat cordial to Joe Schmo, but I'm like, I'm thinking deep down, being perfectly honest, like, shut up, because you've done good in 5, like Walleye, you have 4 tournaments. So you're telling me somebody did okay in 6 tournaments and you're calling me a legend? I kind of want to punch him in the face, to be honest, because it's like you have not earned your stripes. And just like the Joey thing, like he came out guns out, oh my God, give this guy a contract. He may not even requalify.
Yep.
He may
No,
be, he
so
may be not in the elite series.
yeah, so it's funny because one of the advantages that I might have in some of these discussions and argument are the stats and the facts that back it up. So when someone starts like doing that kind of stuff, peacocking, like, well, I've done this, and I'm like, well, actually, you haven't. You really have only cashed 2 checks in 3 years and 1 top 10. And so you might remember the 1 top 10, but you forgot the other times, the 3 times you finished in triple digits. And you had 8 of them over your last 5 years. And they're like, huh? So when these teams start saying stuff like that, and there's a guy now that's actually doing really well on tour. I'm like, hey, that's great. He's having a good couple first 3 events of the year. That doesn't translate to a life career of ultimate success. It just doesn't. And last year, I don't think that person finished below 60th. So, yeah, to your point, well, you can't call anyone a legend until you have a body of work that actually calls yourself. People can call you a legend.
There was one of those guys who he was popping off at the mouth to me, and I said, and he told me, I'm going to ICAST. This is a couple of years ago. And I said, hey, when you go to ICAST, I said, walk down the aisle and see how many people know you. And, I think some of these guys do need a little bit of, even amongst their peers, let alone the public. I think some people, do need a little bit more of a humbling or what have you of this. But does that go into, you used a term with me when we were talking, having a beer talk a while ago, and it's like, I can't remember anything, but I remember that video of Swindle driving down, like you said, in between the guys, which to me, he told the guys he was going to do. I didn't really have as much of a problem with that based on the situation, but irrelevant. But I can remember things. And you said professional hobbyists, I think was the exact term. And
I did.
Is that really the deep heart problem with walleye fishing? Is that it's professional hobbyists?
Yeah, and 100%. In my opinion, that's my opinion. And this is no offense to full-time guys. It's really, they're friends of mine. I get it. They're trying to make a living at it. But
because what does full-time even mean?
Yeah, what does full-time even mean? Well, so a full-time bass fisherman versus a full-time walleye fisherman, right? Full-time bass guy, you're on the elites. You make all of your income from the elites and the sponsorship and all that from it, right? That's kind of what it is, right? There's probably less than 10 guys on a national walleye tour that can do that, and good for them. It's awesome. But I've been around the game long enough to know, and I'm not saying that to brag or anything. It's just I'm old. So, I've been 32 years ago is probably when I first started hanging around with Takasaki and Campbell and the PWT, and I've traveled with those guys. And I'm only saying that just to say, to establish the point that they've never been able to sustain a set of 75 or 100 guys that can make a living at this. It's always been 95%, 95 out of 100 guys either have a limited job, or they own a business, and it's still kind of limited time, but they have more time than guys that have, like me, I only have a certain amount of vacation times a year. I work for a company. And then there's the full-time guys that try to make it. So it's really a working man sport. Campbell and Takasaki told me back then, these guys are working for Hewlett Packard. They're like, make sure you get yourself, if you want to fish these tournaments and you want to actually maybe try to make some money from sponsors or whatever, you got to be a good writer. You got to market yourself, but you got to have the vacation time from a regular job to do this, because you can't make it off of winnings off of a walleye tournament. Well, there's only 5 tournaments a year.
But here's where you're not wrong, but here's where I call bullshit. Yeah. Let's look at the bass guys. So you have a different barrier to entry. So now what if you have $75,000 worth of entry fees, and now you can't take any vacation? So those guys, what do? What are most Todd Faircloth? I could name all these different guys. Bill Dance. What did they all do? Al Linder. They were all guides. Like they didn't, they learned on somebody else's dime per se, and they went and they bounced around and they fished. I think that the difference now is everybody just they want the honeymoon, right? Even the thing is we've gone backwards with walleye tournaments, and I did not think this is where we're going to go today, but nevertheless, I remember we had Todd Frank on the podcast who, he traveled with Gary Roach and they got to be buddies. And Todd's like, hey, the first year I tried to get on the PWT, they wouldn't take me. He went and fished the New York Walleye Trail and won like 6 of the 7 events they had. And they're like, okay, but he still had to have all this signed stuff, had to get sponsors, had to put a resume in, had to have somebody vouch for him. That's 30 years ago. Now it's MasterCard or Visa, 19 years old. Don't give a shit. Here you go. And I think that I really do think that it's a bullshit thing. I think that what it is these guys they wouldn't be full-time if it was job or no job. And again, I've had other guys even on the podcast that we're both friends with. I'll just use one of them as a prime example. Tom Keenan, one of the all-time money winners. He's one of the best there is to do it. Tom was chicken shit to never do it full-time, as he didn't want to, and probably smart because, Tom, just the way Tom is with life and what his goals were. But then you can't be a guy that's what you can't expect these companies to invest in you when you're not doing what they want.
Well, no. So I think the inherent difference, and this is going to start getting good, Ross, because the inherent difference is the amount of people that we're marketing to in bass is much different than the number of people marketing to in walleye fishing. There's like 20 million registered bass fishermen. I think there's a couple million walleye fishing at the most. And you've got, Fox.
It's more than that.
It's more what at Fox. Well, probably half of them are Lake Erie fishermen. I mean, that come up there that say they're licensed and they're going up to Lake Erie. But they're able, these guys on that can get sponsorship from, a multitude of manufacturers on the Bass Elites. They can make six figures doing it. I don't think you can do that as a walleye fisherman. I don't think you can. There might be one or two guys that maybe are making some products, and fish the tour. But there's that,
and I think pro walleye. I mean, I'm a prime example. Like who's a better case study than me? Yeah. So for me, it doesn't make sense to fish tournaments because I get way more impressions than anyone that's on the walleye tour. I just do. I mean, you're a stat guy. It's not even close. Look what we're doing right now. I got off the water today. It's 7:00 at night. I'm having a podcast. This cost me a lot of money and time to do this. Like the podcast is not a profitable deal. I'm just going to tell you, but it is a really good thing. Sponsors watch it. They like it. Sometimes I don't like to think they like what I say, but they like that the people, they're into this and we're doing videos. We're doing all these things. Walleye guys, I'm just here to tell you, and I'm not going to make any friends. Don't care. They're lazy as hell. People in general are lazy, but there is a way. And if you keep looking for a way and say, well, if there was, I don't care if you're playing sports or doing anything else, you're never going to be that guy if you keep waiting and waiting. 100% there's an opportunity. I'm going to tell you right now, I know bass guys that make seven figures, and they're not even guys that you would think are. And because they're doing things just like I do, they design products, they're making royalties, they're doing things that are behind the scenes that are business. So there are guys in walleye fishing that that you probably don't even realize that are making a really, really good living, but they're doing it a different way because they found a niche that is beneficial. The problem with walleye tournaments is you got four of them. Even if you win every one of them, you don't get nobody cares. There's not enough numbers. And then these guys, and again, I'm going to pick on them. It's almost all of them. I've even had guys, we asked to do videos or do podcasts. I can remember back, back when we were buddies in the beginning, I did media for FLW. And I literally had people that were like, yeah, why would I do that? Why would I be in a magazine article? Are you shitting me?
Wow.
Like insane, right? And then you go back to when the Linders were there, they had a radio show, they had a TV show, they had a print magazine. They promoted that. We don't have that now. 30 years later, we've gone backwards so far, but the angler has not helped themselves at all. I'm telling you right now.
Well, so yeah, you're throwing a lot at me. And thank you, by the way, for the articles you wrote in my favor on the FLW. You even got me on a cover. So thank you for that. I still have that. My mom, I think, still has it framed. My parents have it framed in their living room somewhere. So thanks for that. That's what goes back to my whole thing about professional hobby, because one thing hasn't changed, Ross, is the fact that this is a working man's sport. Walleye fishing is mostly for working people. Not that people that aren't doing it full-time aren't working. That's not what I mean. I mean by working for somebody, working for a corporation, work for a business, that you have limited vacation. That's what I mean by working for someone, limited vacation time. That hasn't changed. I'm looking, I don't know if you've ever seen this before. I've got all the stats from the professional walleye trail in front of me, right? You're probably in a few of these. And if you want to tell me what your ones are, I can tell you how good or bad you did. But I look back, the number of anglers that were fishing it hasn't changed much. There's 108, 120, 130, 150 at Lake Erie.
But you know what has happened? And again, I look at it like this. If you got 100 soldiers in a room and you go, we still got 100 soldiers. I say, you got 100 Navy SEALs, or you got 100 guys living in their mom's basement and they're 40 years old and weigh 400 pounds. So quantity and quality are two different things, but that has totally changed, because how many of those people are snipers compared to when it used to be? Because early PWT, you couldn't be a sniper.
No, you can't. You're right. Yeah, because you did have to meet, a committee to get approved. But that model also didn't end up working. It didn't end up working because they went to too many tournaments and guys just couldn't fish it. Then they went to 2 divisions and it got better, but it didn't last because they weren't having enough sponsors doing a lot of things. And here's my point. Social media has helped the guys now to be able to do this kind of stuff. Like you're saying, you're calling them lazy. Social media gives guys the opportunity now to promote brands better than ever before. It always used to be print, or you had to get in front of someone to do a magazine article or something. That's what Takasaki and Campbell always said. You got to get in front of these writers. You have to do something. Well, now you don't need any of that. You can do a podcast on your own. You can go record social media. So there are opportunities to do that. It's just, I don't think the model didn't work for FLW either, Ross. The whole thing with the FLW, they promoted, when they went out to get sponsors, they said, we've got this bass circuit. And oh, by the way, after you give us $2 million to be a title sponsor, Walmart, we've got walleyes and redfish too. Oh, okay, whatever. And that model didn't even work.
100%. But again, I blame that on the anglers, because again, when they went to more tournaments, everybody said, walleye guys said, no, we're not going to do it. Ultimately, the business plan is difficult. But when you look at guys like Al Linder or Gary Roach, that were all those guys originally, almost all Feligy, I mean, on and on and on. Dave Hans, these guys were guides that said, hey, I think I'm really good. I think I'm the best in South Dakota. I think I'm the best in Northern Wisconsin. And these guys went in and there was an opportunity. But again, some things would get me in trouble because people in confidence, but there's just these guys shit on the opportunities because to me, they wanted to be heroes, just like right now, run around in their tournament shirts and not doing the work. The amount of things that on the back end that I can tell you with the media stuff that I do, where people come to me and they're like, oh, you're actually going to follow through. Yeah. Mind blowing. And I think that's the thing. And I think the younger generation is really not helping that. I mean, there was a guy that won a classic a few years ago. And again, a buddy of mine works at Bassmaster, and what they had to do, pulling teeth to get the guy that won the classic to do the media, which is required to actually get the check, but they literally had to drag it out of him and remind him that contractually to get your $500,000 or whatever it was. Yeah. And so that mindset is, again, it's not just young guys, but that mindset is, I think there's so many guys that have no intention on doing it other than a hobby, but yet they act like it is.
Well, you're kind of feeding into my point. To me, the majority of these people, and it's been proven for 30 years, if you treat it like a professional hobby, knowing that it's probably not likely that I can make a couple $100,000 a year living, 100 guys probably aren't going to do that. It's proven for 30 something years now that probably doesn't work. Bass have somehow done it because their market share, I believe, is a lot bigger. And God bless the guys that are doing this full time. Love the guys. All those guys are awesome guys. They're great guys and good for them. I mean, when I'm sitting there working and I'm like trailing working, I'm seeing those guys fish. I'm like, God dang it, that'd be. But then, but that comes with its own challenges, right?
Then the reality sets in of what that was, right?
Well, pension plans, it's, and retirement accounts and 401k, you got to still build all that stuff up while you're trying to fish and do all that stuff. But here's my thing. In my opinion, it is, if you treat it like a professional hobby. So if we have a circuit of 100 guys, and that's it, no snipers, 100 or even 120, and you limit the number of tournaments, because I can't do 7 tournaments a year. I don't have 7 weeks vacation. I can't do it. But I could pull off 5 weeks if they did it. My thing is, you can have the 10 guys that fish all of them. Go for it. That's awesome. But if you have 90 out of the 100 that have limited vacation and they put up the same amount of money and you got 100 guys and that's all you get, and you have a feeder system to feed in the bottom 10 or bottom 20 every year that gets that kind of loses out, that's to me how we can start building this. And then you start doing requirements like you're saying. You have to have a social media account. Maybe you even have to do a podcast. You're assigned to do a podcast every whatever it is. But a couple of you are assigned to do a podcast before every tournament, or you've got to be up on stage and do whatever it is. I don't know what the NPA gets involved with. Maybe doing some interviews off the stage or something that forces every single person in that elite field to now treat this as a profession. But yet I'm trying to treat this as I'm going to be the best hobby tournament fisherman I can be. I'm going to promote the products that I use the best I can. I'm going to get out whatever I can from those guys, knowing that I'm not a full-time guy, but I'm promoting the brands professionally and with my reputation's at stake. That's where I think it could work. And I think it would go along with what you're saying about guys being lazy. It would force guys to have to be part of it. You'd have to commit to something like the elites. They have to wear the sticker. They have to show up for media days. They have to have, limited practice. They have to do this kind of stuff. So if we start there, I feel it could work, because I don't think there's 50 guys out there that can fish 7 or 8 weeks. I just don't. Entry fees have gone up, but prize money necessarily hasn't. Original PWTs, 50 grand. I got the RCL brochures from 2002 still. PWT.
God, you're a fossil.
From 1990. I know, dude. Look at, first place was $50,000 plus a boat. So it was like 90 grand. Entry fees were $1,250 for an FLW back in 2003.
In 2070, somebody's gonna be cleaning out your attic and be like, who the fuck is this?
Exactly. They are. Well, that's not, this is, look at folder, RCL, PWT results. You're probably in here
sick.
Somewhere
You're
on the bottom.
sick.
Yeah.
I am somewhere.
So no, the purses haven't changed much. Honestly, I would argue, this is where I disagree with you respectfully. I don't think tournaments are in that bad of a spot right now, Ross. I really don't. We're getting the same number of, I think tournaments, the number of entries for the NWT averages about 122 for the light in 11 years now. 122 of them. 122 anglers per tournament. The PWT was about the same thing. We shouldn't have 200 guys, but guess what? Michigan Walleye Tour is getting 100 to 100, I think 150 in some of their events. They've got 5 events a year. They're thriving. AIM's doing half decent.
Let me tell you why.
Let me finish.
Let me tell you why they're in trouble. I'm interrupting you.
All right. Who's in trouble?
Because the tournaments are.
I'm going to drink my hydrogen-powered water while I listen to this.
You're gonna need more hydrogen by the time I'm done with it. So you can use and I know you're the stat king. I wouldn't want to go after the stat king, but 120, 150, the average is irrelevant, because again, we're talking about quality. I caught 900 fish today, John. Well, what's your best 5-way? And it's the same thing. Walleye fishermen, these tournaments are being floated by a couple people because they have a vested interest. White River Marine Group is that interest.
Sure.
When they say, you know what? One person says, I'm done with the NWT, it's over. One person.
And you don't think there's anybody in play that can come and sweep in and take it?
The plug is being pulled in the same way, like with Major League Fishing, allegedly right now. Again, I don't know that, but I know some people that know some of the people that have that financing there, and they're said this is no longer fun or profitable. But again, I don't think it was profitable, but it's no different than when you give your nephew, $50. To him, that's $10,000 or $100,000. But it's that same thing with these guys that are in it. White River Marine Group, I work with them. They're selling boats because of this. So it still makes sense for them. None of the other companies, it just doesn't make sense. And that's why I don't think it's in a good place. I think it's not in a good place even with bass fishing, because when you start seeing, is that the humming from your freaking hydrogen water? Is that what that is?
No, they're out back. They're doing some demolition. Yeah,
nice.
They're demoing. I'm looking at a big crane doing some demo work.
Just, we would get really high ratings if you got like murdered on camera, because you guys listen to this. JB is from Chi-Town. He's down in Chi-Town.
Shot right now. Yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't we capture John's last moments? How horrific of me to say. But exactly. No, but it comes down to, when you look at the bass, look at the headlines, the dumpster fires, the things, because the dollars and cents aren't working as well for both sides. That's the problem, is there's not a clear-cut thing. If Uncle Johnny pulls the plug on NWT because he goes, you know what? And right now, boat sales are not amazing as they were a few years ago. That's a bad deal.
It is. But so I think I'm going to disagree with you even more. I think a lot of what you're saying is opinion. Unless you showed me facts, I think it's opinion, because first of all, BPT's been going on forever. It's been working. And you just heard something. I've heard the same story for 6 years now, and it hasn't gone away. Now, the difference is, Ross, in your defense, there are 2 major bass fishing top level circuits in the country. It probably needs to be unified, right? The NBA had 2 divisions. The NFL had 2 things. It needs to be unified. I believe it needs to be unified. And maybe that's why there isn't enough room for 2 divisions. But again, I think BPT is more of a marketing TV show than it is a bass circuit. And I think I agree with you. I agree. Fine. If someone decided at White River Marine Group that they wanted to pull the NWT, but isn't it owned by, well, it's partly owned by them and partly owned by Wade Middleton and those guys, right? Yeah, it is. It is.
Well, I mean, listen,
just
like, I mean, different people that we both know are part owners in it. What does that mean? Let's say NWT, just like the RCL or FLW or PW, the name, the initials mean nothing. Where can we go to fish for 50 grand or more? You don't have anything with a namesake. Their website's not worth millions of dollars or, any of that stuff. All those things would transfer very, very simply, right? When it comes down to it, those things are not financially stable without White River Marine Group. They're not.
Well, I agree. And well, I mean, is the Bass Elites sustainable without, I don't even know who owns them. I mean, without their connection with Fox or ASP, I think it's on Fox Sports now on the weekends, right? I mean, I don't know. But I think to get back to what I earlier saying, if we had this elite group of guys and we start incorporating some of the live cameras, which seem to be very popular. Now, granted, Head to Head did a pretty good job, and they did a poor job in some things, but they did some pretty darn good things with getting to know the anglers, interviews, and the live feed. The live portion of it. Now, it was during COVID. People were stuck at home. Great timing. But I think if we can get some of that stuff into walleye fishing, I think we'll start elevating the sport. I really do. And I think someone will think that it's valuable. Now, part of the reason why some of the negative things that were going on is what we talked about earlier, not enforcing rules. That's never good for a sport, ever, no matter who you are. It's not good. But if they can somehow find a way to maybe have this management run this circuit a little bit better, more professionally and more concise, and follow the rules, I don't know. I think it can be done. I think we all need to accept that it has to be on a smaller scale. We are not, our market is not as big as bass fishing. It just isn't. But I think we can make it. What's that?
It can't be, like you said, the number of people. When you've got something that's super popular in Maryland or Delaware or Rhode Island, and you're like, well, it's not going to be as popular as something that's only done in Texas, Florida, or California. You're a numbers guy, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, why do we not? I would love to hear if I was involved financially with them, I would be like, why do we not have live coverage? And I'm going to tell you, it has to be money and people not putting any more money in it than they have to because of already poor returns.
That's exactly right.
Basically what you just said is that I was right indirectly there. You didn't realize that.
No.
you did because you said it was, we're healthy. Well, you're not, because you can't even afford to do your own promotion with live coverage, which would give you other promotion opportunities and selling marketing.
That's just one piece of what I'm thinking is going to be part of this whole successful thing. It's funny because I looked at the payouts, the PWT, this says this was 30% of the field payouts.
Well, original. Let me back up and tell you another one on that. So again, when we were doing this, the conversation just a few years ago was, hey, we're fishing for the same money we were in 1997 at 55,000 or whatever. Do you know what changed? They're giving a boat away and they're claiming it's 150 grand because a boat is now 150 grand, not 50 grand. Boom. Yeah, I just keep putting nails in your coffin, JB. This is not getting pretty, bro.
Well, no, you're trying to say that it's in a bad situation, but I think there's more people participating in tournaments than ever before. I honestly think we're promoting products better than ever before because there are some really good anglers promoting some really good. There's a handful of guys that are doing a really good job on social media. There are. I would say I agree with you collectively. No, not everyone is, but more so than ever before. You can't tell me that more guys are back then are promoting products. There's no way, because the only way you got exposure was through in fishermen or getting to know you. Ross, can you please write an article about me on the Illinois River? Can you write a
My
rigging article
God,
about
the
me?
amount of times that I heard that.
You probably regret doing it now.
100%. Don't even want, yeah. Regretting now, regretting right now. But no, I mean, listen, I'm not anti-tournament. I think that the more of these things that are successful indirectly and directly help me and the people that I work with.
Yeah.
The Lake Erie Walleye Trail is arguably, even though the chaos that they went through has as much profile or money and for what it is, the business model is better. And again, to the point of, I think it's because we aren't set up or ready for a pro thing. The Michigan Walleye Trail, like, our buddy is one of the honchos with that they are doing a really good job and have turned that thing around. They had some chaos there too. And some of all the shenanigans, you get egos and money and all that stuff involved. You're going to have that. But I think where it comes in is in the pro thing. I would argue that pro bass fishing, and I don't think this is my argument, just look at any video headline, that it's the upper end, and a lot of that is angler induced. And also because people that are stat people like you that have a lot of money go, this don't make sense, bro. This don't make sense. And if it don't make sense, it don't make dollars. And if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense, JB.
True. That sounds like a rap song.
Yeah.
But I think we also maybe, we kind of maybe look at when we're involved in the tournament world, I think we think that everything revolves around that. And I think there's such a small number of people that tournament fish, both on the bass side and the walleye side, that I think the products and the manufacturers are looking at bigger picture. Yeah, they want to be part of a tournament. They want to sponsor tournaments, and they think tournament anglers influence product buys. I think they do. It's kind of like NASCAR influencing what's happening with cars and Indy cars, advancement in cars and speed and tires and all that stuff. But there's more people just drive a car that don't care about racing than the racers. So in fishing, I think it's the same way. I think there's more people that don't tournament fish than do. I mean, that's not that smart of a statement, but
Walmart, all of the big fancy places, Walmart is still the biggest tackle store. At least they were a few years ago. There's more people that fish for catfish and panfish than walleyes and bass put together. So to your point, 100% that I think on the big picture of things. And I learned that a long time ago in different seminars and stuff I would do. I'd say, hey, and I would name angler A as someone that I had confidence in, or somebody that, as a respect factor that won a bunch. And people go, who?
Yeah.
The amount of people that we were just fishing in Florida and had somebody down there and they were, in the business, and they're like, hey, so how'd you kind of get going? I was like, well, Al Linder. And they looked at me like, huh? This is someone that works in the fishing business. I said, you don't know Al Linder? In Fisherman? Now, In Fisherman is still around. Now, maybe they aren't what they were. They still have a TV show. They still have a print magazine. How the fuck do you work in the outdoor industry and you don't know what In Fisherman or Al Linder is? But the point is somebody doesn't. And so, you're somebody else that fishes that just doesn't care about that. Sometimes I 100% think, you're right. We do get wrapped up in our own things. But at the same point, if we do a better job with that, it makes all that other stuff easier and better. So,
yeah, I know when I'm at the airport, when I'm at the airport, Ross, I see these bass guys, nobody even walks up to them. Nobody sees them. Nobody notices them. Nobody. Even like you said, even like at ICAST, unless you're wearing your jersey, half these guys you wouldn't recognize. I mean, my
camera guy, producer dude, he thinks he's famous. He thinks he's Insta famous because people all the time are stopping him. Oh yeah, it's a dumpster fire. But I can't believe.
Did you say stuff like that? Girl just looked at me. She just checked me out.
No, people literally do come up to him because they see the camera, and I'm like, well, they know because of me. If I wasn't here, they wouldn't know you, but they see the camera. They're like, are you producer, dude? It is funny stuff, but it just goes to show you the things that are popular now have shifted, right? Like we had a TV show. He was my TV producer, and now the podcasts and the videos are a much bigger play. I just did a video at ICAST tonight. There's 125,000 people saw it. Unpaid organic, that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. So there's different ways to do this. But I can't believe we talked for over an hour and we did not talk really about stats at all. I feel like that's a win within itself because I said I'm not talking with stats with this guy. Screw that.
Yeah,
we did not fix anything. We solved no problems.
Nothing.
Probably pissed off a couple people. We barely drank the hydrogen water. John did not die, which was fortunate because he is in Chicago, folks, and God knows who would want to go there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that I say this, and the producer's already rolling the eyes? Is there anything you would like to leave us with that could help somebody be a better angler, or a stat? I'll let you have one stat if you can roll something out. We're probably gonna have to edit this out because no one. I think we've had like one person hit this. Everybody else is.
To be a better angler, I think honestly, to be a better angler, I think people need to have more of an open mind. You got to lose exactly what got you to a place in your life that you're catching them, and you got to start looking at places you never looked before, and you got to start interpreting conditions and wind and weather and say, okay, they're not here, they're not shallow, they're medium, they're not medium, they're deep, they're top of the water column, middle of the bottom. I think just more people got to be more open-minded about what their whole life they're fishing a certain way, and they go to another body of water and they fish that certain way, and they're like, I didn't catch anything. I just think you got to have a short memory, and you got to interpret the conditions and just trust maybe your instincts and how you catch them. Yeah.
One of the most open-minded guys that I ever fished with, probably not now because he's so old, but Gary Roach. But I was thinking, when you said what you just said, I was thinking Mike Gofron.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Short memory.
And I just wonder how those guys would fare if they were still in the heat of battle now.
He'd do well. If you put a forward-facing sonar for him with the rest of these guys, and he knows how to catch them. He was always really good at finding them. John Campbell was really good at finding them. Really good. And that was without that kind of stuff, but side imaging helps, down at, 360 helps. And then throw a stat at you. I think the average number of 2-day limits across 50 NWT tournaments is, I think, 33% of anglers catch a 2-day limit over 50 tournaments. That's it.
You told me a long time ago, just beer talk, and they're like, if you just catch 5 fish every day through the season, you may not win Angler of the Year, but you're going to be in very good contention. There's
a caveat to that. You need to catch the 5 fish of the average weight from that specific body of water, that tournament. And that's what gets you. Not just 5 fish, not just 5 keepers. Now, you don't know the average size until after the tournament, but I have enough data over the history of all the time to say this body of water, generally the average fish is 3.8 pounds on Green Bay. So if you go catch 38 pound, 10 fish like that, 38 pounds, you're going to be in pretty much this place. And throughout the course of the year, through the MWC, I don't think you would ever finish out of the top 10 in AOI. And for the NWT, I think there was only one year that you would probably not finish in the top 7 for AOI if you did that. There's only been, I think there's been less than 15 occurrences. There's been less than 15 occurrences that an angler has caught a limit of fish every single day of an NWT season over the course of 11 years.
I shouldn't have let you get going on the stat stuff.
This is what's doing it. I'm telling you, it just kicks it out.
We just cut out bad. I think the internet gods cut us out on purpose because of these stats coming.
There's more where that came from, Ross. Anytime, you want to fill up your cocktail, I'd be happy to fill you in on some more.
I think we lost Ross.
Yeah, see, I just blew his mind.
You just blew it all apart.
I just blew his mind apart. That mind-blowing emoji.
I lost you. You lost me. I'm yelling at everybody, but I couldn't handle the stats. The internet couldn't handle the stats from JB. The inflated, political styles. I don't know. We had 85 million people that voted for this guy. I don't know what happened either. We don't do politics, but y'all know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do.
I can't thank you enough for your time here. I don't think we solved anything, but I think it was fun kind of beating it up and hashing it up with you. And I think that these things are so controversial because there's not a 2+2 to this. There just isn't. If there was, hopefully somebody would have fixed it by now and making some money or making people happy or something. But I can't thank you enough for your time. Hopefully we can do this again, maybe on a different take. We've been trying to do this for a while, and just when I saw you at ICAST, I said, let's just do what we did and not
No,
have too much of an agenda.
I appreciate it. No, anytime I get a chance to sit on the podcast with you and get a chance to be heard by your listeners, I appreciate it. No, big time. No, I'd love to. Yeah, we didn't really solve anything. We did because it was kind of all over the place. If we want to, if we want to do a specific topic one day and really dive in and get another angler on here with some difference of opinion, I'm all for it, because I'm still in the belief that it's if you just cater to the people that have limited amount of time, you could probably make something work, and you could force these people to be professional hobbyists, and then it might work. I don't know.
It's two different things. I got one of my clients and one of my people that I work for, one of the fishing companies I work for, both these guys don't know each other and they use the same line. And I know they didn't come up with it, but I love it. And they both say, Ross, you don't hire a part-time dentist. Yeah. And I'm like, at first time I heard it, I was like, he said, you don't let somebody drill. You only get one, it's like eyeballs. You don't let somebody work on your eyes. You only got one set of them. So money don't come into play at that. And, it's the same thing, I think, with this fishing thing. I think we can agree to disagree in a lot of these things, but I think the biggest thing is there's the professional hobbyist is one thing, and then having an elite league, or, not claiming that they're the same thing is the problem.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think you can't call yourself I'm a professional fisherman if I'm just doing this as, in my free time, my vacation time. There's no way. I mean, it's like, okay, whatever. But at the same time, you're letting snipers in win a bunch of money. One guy that's never fished a pro tournament, he decides to pay his entry fee, and now he's a pro. I mean, that's not necessarily fair to the guys that are fishing
MasterCard and Visa.
Yeah, I mean, they took more than half the money at Red Wing. The locals did.
Oh God, I knew if I opened the door in this stat thing, here we go.
Right.
Well, we'll have you back on. Maybe we will do some stats. You keep us posted, or keep me posted at least, with some different ideas and things. But again, thank you for your time. Thanks for tuning. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and all those things. If you can't find us at this point, that's your own darn problem, because we are everywhere. All the digital download sites. When in doubt, go to bigwaterfishing.com if you can't, because we got all the links there, and of course the social media stuff. So until the next episode, me and John, we are out.